Hello there. I don't normally record these off stream, and I don't normally give an intro before a segment, but I think this might appeal to a broader demographic than the type of content that I normally do. I'm Vosh. I normally do politics, but I like anime and video games. Who would have guessed? White guy, who could have thought? Anyway, Attack on Titan, or Shingeki no Kyojin, recently finished. Its final manga chapter was put out just, was it a few days ago? Recently. And this has led to a bunch of people. Some people are happy, some people are mad. This always happens. I certainly have my problems with the ending. I guess I'll talk about that a little bit here. But the main question that I was interested in is one that I've been hearing asked for years now. I've heard it asked at me when I stream. I hear people talk about it on the Twitter and the news media. And what is the question? The question is Attack on Titan fascist? Which is a really interesting question. And given that I talk about fascism so much anyway, and that I've read all of Attack on Titan, yeah, I'll give it a shot. So I'm going to give a brief, and I mean incredibly scarce plot summary of what takes place in Shingeki no Kyojin, okay? So if you haven't seen it, maybe don't watch the video. Maybe I'll spoil a few things. I'll spoil actually a lot of things that you might not want spoiled. It's a good story. I mean, it's not perfect by any means, but I really, it's certainly, at least for the first half explicitly, I really, really, really enjoyed Attack on Titan. So, if you want to go into that blind, then maybe you should, especially now that the manga's done and the anime will be done soon. So, what does it mean for a piece of media to be fascist? It's kind of a weird point to make, Like, do people talk about that? Like, is this piece of media socialist? Is this piece of media neoliberal? People don't normally go that route, but many people were concerned with Attack on Titan's aesthetic imagery, themes, narrative, in that they were worried that it might either intentionally or unintentionally promote certain modes of political thought that people find distasteful, which, I mean, I find fascism distasteful personally. I like democracy, I'm one of those. I'm a democracy cuck, you know how it is. Now, the conversation on this got muddled a little bit because the mangaka, Isayama, the person who wrote Attack on Titan, has had some, let's say, contentious Twitter discussions where it seems as though he may be engaging in a little bit of the Japanese war crime denialism, which I think is unfortunately common over in Japan. Specifically, I believe he was accused of denying the rape of Nanjing, which was an atrocious war crime committed by the Japanese forces against, in the Asian theater. And additionally, there are characters in Attack on Titan which are references to Japanese, figures in war. I believe Commander Pixiv was a reference to a participant in the Sino-Japanese War, and he committed some war crimes, the person who was being referenced. I don't really know. These aren't the questions I'm interested in answering, because at the end of the day, if there were problems in the thought process of the mangaka, of Isayama, they should have shown up in the media, right? So I want to critique the media. There are a lot of people who talk about the author, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I think we should be willing to be skeptical about the influences, motivations, and biases of people who write things. But if we're talking about whether or not the hit show / manga Attack on Titan is fascist, I don't think relying on arguments against the writer is sufficient on its own. You have to attack the source material. So, the source material. I know that normally when people make these like anime analysis videos, they have like pictures and still it's like they editing, but I don't do editing on this channel. So consider this more stream of consciousness. So very, very basic plot synopsis. I mean, as basic as it gets. Okay. So here's the scene. Okay. Humanity has been crushed down into the residents of one single megacity. Okay. All of humanity condensed down into one city. They're all that's left. And that city is besieged by the Titans. See, Attack on Titan, it's all coming together. Look, we did get a picture in here. Big, big Titans. I mean, we're talking 20, 30, 50 feet tall. Huge. They can knock down buildings and walls. It's bad stuff. Okay? And our protagonist, Eren Yeager, is a young boy when he witnesses his mother being killed by a Titan as the outermost wall of that mega fortress city humanity resides within collapses. And he swears vengeance on Titans. He's gonna get those Titans. So he joins the Survey Corps. And the Survey Corps They are the sort of prominent military organization that we follow over the course of the show. It's your standard anime bullshit. You know, they have like cool 16-year-olds doing like flip rocket jumps off buildings to do. Look, it's sick, okay? It looks amazing in animation. I don't care how dumb it is. It's cool as hell. And basically, the whole story, at least from the beginning, is the mystery. What are the Titans? What are they doing here? Why is humanity crunched down to this one city? Where is everyone else? What happened? Nobody knows. Or maybe some people know. It's a little unclear. And our protagonists try to find out who, how, what, and why. Now, eventually the story opens up, and I'm going to skip past, I'm talking years of intrigue and spoilers here, because, I mean, if you want to follow the story through point by point, you can if you want to, but it's, I'll say this much, okay? Attack on Titan does the thing where they have a fairly simple story that they tell in an unbelievably complicated way. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, but okay. So here's the real story, okay? Here's the real story. So basically, here I'm going to draw up a map, okay? Here's the world map. This is our world, by the way, but we can work in it, okay? Because we're gonna get abstract, okay? Here's what happened. Here's the story of Attack on Titan. 2,000 or so years ago, one of the innumerable tribes across the world had a slave named Ymir. I mean, she was just a slave girl in one of these societies, you know, one amongst many dozens, hundreds, thousands, but she discovers an ancient, somewhat divine power that allows her to turn into a Titan. A Titan, not just like the Titans I just showed you, but an intelligent Titan, an intelligent, conscious Titan who can use their power with the effect of, I'll tell you, a Titan back 2,000 years ago, basically a thermonuclear weapon, okay? I mean, basically a weapon of mass destruction. You turn into something 100 feet tall against people who have bronze gladiuses? No. No. So our slave girl, Ymir, that's her name, inherits the power of the Titans and is used by King Fritz, who's the leader of their territory, and they expand outwards using her incredible power. I mean, they expand everywhere. I have no idea where in the world they started, okay? I'm not a lore expert, but they expand. Oh my god, do they expand. Ymir eventually dies. Her body is consumed by the children of King Fritz, and the power of the Titans is inherited to the entire people who use them. The Eldians, they were. And the Eldian Empire got big. I mean, I don't know, did they take over the whole world? Probably. Using the power of the Titans? Oh yeah, they got big. Big. Nobody else stood a chance, okay? They were the god kings of the world. Their empire, it was Rome times 20. It was Genghis Khan times 100, okay? They were everywhere. But eventually, 100,000 years, whatever, down the line, one of the descendants in the royal line, a King Fritz, he started to feel bad about the whole destroying and raping the entire world thing. You know, I guess he had a bit of a pang of consciousness. You know, felt a little bad about it. So what he did was he orchestrated a big old civil war amongst the Eldian Empire, which led to fractures and them splitting up and eventually being disempowered and weakened. And in the process of this weakening, King Fritz took a portion of his people and they all flew to Madagascar, basically, okay? They flew to Madagascar. Now, King Fritz, he thought, our people's power is incredibly destructive, and it's genetic. Eldian people, if exploited in the right way, can be turned into Titans, which are basically weapons of mass destruction. And additionally, there are like elder Titans amongst our bloodline that can be transferred by one person eating the corpse of another, or by a person with those powers dying and then being inherited by another person. For as long as the Eldian people exist, they will always be unbelievably dangerous. So King Fritz, the 1 billionth, flies over to Madagascar with a portion of his people, leaving a good portion of Eldians all around the world kind of stranded? All over the place, you know, just kind of like segments, chunks of Eldian people all over the place without any central leadership or with the backing of the Titan military. And, well, the rest of the world being kind of pissed off about their several thousand-year-long reign of terror perpetuated by the Eldians. These guys, you know, sore losers. They start to treat the remaining Eldians like absolute dog shit. The Marleyans, I believe that's what they're called. Oh god, let me look it up so I don't embarrass myself. AOT Marleyans, isn't that what they're called? Marleyans. Okay, whew, all right, it's just Gotta make sure, okay? So, don't get the lore nerds on me. The Marlians, who, for the sake of argument, let's just say they're Saudi Arabia. I don't know. I don't care. Let's just say they're here. It really doesn't matter. So, the story expands, and Eren Yeager, our intrepid protagonist, begins to realize the truth of the world. That, hey, they're not the only humans. That city that they live in, the big fortress city that they've lived in, that's not the only refuge for humanity. In fact, that's the only place on Earth that's under attack by Titans. You see, what the Marlians have been doing is they have been experimenting on the bodies of the Eldians that were left behind and turning them into Titans and dumping them essentially on the shores of Madagascar. Because everyone on Earth hates the Eldians, and everyone on Earth knows that they're right here, and everyone on Earth wants them pretty much dead. Pretty much everyone wants them dead. I mean, they perpetuated an insane campaign of terror around the world. And that campaign of terror has been wiped from the memories of the children of Ymir, from the Eldians. You see, King Fritz, when he moved all his folks over here to Madagascar, wiped their memories, made them think they were the last remnants of humanity. He used his divine powers to do this. So that's the situation. Basically, we have a group of Titan fighters who are actually the progenitors of the Titans, and they're over here on Madagascar using like mid-18th century technology or whatever, and the rest of the world is on World War II era technology, and they hate the Eldians like with all their guts. And that hate is depicted in the show and in the manga in some pretty real ways. I mean, look at this. So Eldians in the Marlian nation are literally kept in ghettos with star armbands. The historical parallels could not possibly be more direct. They're Jews. The Eldians are, at least in their persecution, are portrayed similarly to the Jewish people during World War II. They live in areas that are wildly bigoted against them, and at this point, the Eldians who are just in these ghettos, these Warsaw ghettos, they don't have any real power. They aren't really dangerous. Some of them inherit the power of the Titans, and they're used by the Marlian military. In essence, what makes them dangerous is exploited by the government that oppresses them. But individually, Eldians aren't bad or evil. They're just oppressed people. An individual Eldian doesn't have any more power than an individual Marlian, but the cycle of hatred continues. Anyway, Eren Yeager realizes that his humanity is not under attack, only his people, the Eldians, are. B, the rest of the world is against him. And C, that the entity that he thought was his enemy the entire time, the Titans, they're actually part of his birthright. And in fact, Eren can himself turn into a Titan, something that's discovered rather early on into the show, though its explanation is not given for quite some time. So what do you do? What do you do now? Well, let's say you're Eren, okay? You wanted to protect your people. You still want to protect your people. But now you realize your enemies aren't some mysterious Titan force. It's actually the world's militaries. All of them. They just don't like you very much. So what does Eren do? Well, Eren's big idea, you follow through with me here, is to use divine powers that he steals from part of the children of Ymir royalty to destroy the walls that surrounded the city he was born in, which are actually full of mega titans, and then the mega titans will stroll across the entire planet, killing like everyone. Can we get a picture of that on screen? The rumbling, that's what it's called. Yeah, this is the rumbling, okay? Just thousands and thousands of mega titans just strolling across the entire planet, levying city, just flattening the earth. Which, as apocalyptic scenarios go, is a pretty original one. It's not one I've seen done before, so props to that. Do you get the irony here? The world hates the Eldians because the Eldians ravaged the planet a long time ago, and because they consider the Eldians a threat. In reality, the Eldians aren't that much of a threat. The old King Fritz neutered them by trapping them on Madagascar, and in the rest of the world, the Eldians are basically just imprisoned minorities. But Eren Yeager, in his hatred of the rest of the world, he unleashes the rumbling, pictured here, and does to the world exactly what they all feared the Eldians would do. According to the show, about 80% of the population dies in the rumbling. The world population. We're talking billions of human beings. a greater Holocaust than anything this fantasy world would have ever seen in its past, caused by an Eldian for Eldians. And these people are depicted in other societies as an oppressed minority group. Do you see how that's interesting? I'm not leading you to any conclusions here, but there are some mixed allegories here that I think are really worth breaking into. I mean, if the Eldians are persecuted the world round, which, again, they super duper are, there's no getting around this imagery, okay? Then the implication that would normally be brought about there was that the Eldians are unjustly persecuted because they're not actually a threat, but people think they're a threat. That's what happened in World War II, after all. The reason why Jews, well, not just in World War II in Germany, but pretty much throughout all of history, have been persecuted is because of the insane shit people would say about them, making them fear the Jews, when in reality they were just trying to get by, you know? That's what happens to pretty much every minority group, really. You know, you tell a bunch of stories about how scary they are, and you run wild with it, and then you've convinced yourself that they're so scary, the only thing you can do to keep them in check is to do something horrible. And we know how that played out in World War II. But one of the important preconditions of that line of logic being sound is the knowledge that the oppressed minority actually is harmless, or they are regular people. They aren't a threat to the world. But the Eldians are. Now, Eren Yeager, our protagonist, probably wouldn't have initiated the world Holocaust if he hadn't been subject to the hatred and bigotry and persecution that the world had levied his way. But the reason the world levied that hatred and bigotry and persecution at the Eldians is because they feared exactly this happening, you know? So it's interesting. It's almost a mixed metaphor, you know? Are the Eldians dangerous? Well, there's another character in the show. Sorry, I keep saying the show because I always think of the show when I think of AOT. But in the manga, who actually had a different plan for the Eldian people. His plan was mass sterilization. His plan was that, hey, look, the Eldians got handed a bad deal in life, you know? But they are dangerous. I mean, they're dangerous. As long as the Eldian people exist, there will be a collection of Eldians who are capable of essentially activating weapons of mass destruction with no warning. I mean, if you can turn into one of these on a whim, you could level a city easily. If there weren't special precautions taken to prepare for your attack, you could kill tens of thousands of people. Nobody could stop you. They show constantly in this show, even battleships can't stop these titans. The explosions just wash off of them. You need specialized anti-titan equipment, which is rare and unreliable and hard to come by and expensive and requires trained usage, which is also rare. So the fact that Eldians can do that is itself dangerous. Real danger, not some fake made up lies as part of oppression danger, but real danger, you know? So what if we sterilized all of them? They could use this was the plan. They could use their divine power to essentially just magically prevent all Eldians from having children. And then after a couple generations, you know, they all die out, and this incredible power and apparently the ability to destroy the planet goes away. And that's kind of horrifying. I mean, we're talking about mass sterilization, which is a form of genocide, undeniably, done to an oppressed minority because that oppressed minority is dangerous. I don't know. We're dealing with some moral gray territory, it would seem here. It's not really an ideal solution, but then, as evidenced by Eren Yeager's behavior, maybe there was a reason to fear the Eldians. They controlled the world for a long time, and they still control powers that are beyond the capability of mankind to deal with. But that doesn't justify persecution of innocent people. It doesn't justify keeping Eldians in Warsaw ghettos. These people, the Eldians in the ghettos, they're not dangerous. They're just regular people. They don't have the ability to turn into these sentient titans. They're just latently inheritors of that bloodline. So what's the correct answer? Well, I'll admit I'm not satisfied by the answer that was given by the end of the manga. In fact, I was left deeply unsatisfied. See, in the manga, the final few chapters reveal Eren's plan all along. He killed 80% of the planet's population, knowing that eventually his friends, who all teamed up to stop him from doing that, would succeed. They kill Eren, and now because Eren's friends, who are mostly Eldians, saved the world from Eren, who is also an Eldian, the world will know the Eldians aren't all that bad. And then Eren Yeager erased the Titan powers from the world, which why couldn't he do that to begin with? Maybe I missed a point there. Maybe there was a reason why that couldn't be done to begin with. This to me was really weird. Killing now the whole like tragic martyr thing is a good story bit. Like I'm gonna kill these people to look like the bad guy. You're gonna save me, and that's gonna save the city. Like it's a story you've heard before, you know. I don't know if it works when you're genociding 80% of the population of humanity. That's a little bit beyond. That's like wow, you, whoo, that because the alternative to that would have been allowing the Eldian people to be wiped out around the world, right? But that's a far smaller proportion of people than 80%. Like, I don't know. It just doesn't seem like we're on a winning bargain here. But all of Eren's friends, when they find out that was his plan, they were like, yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for becoming a mass murderer for us. You really were a hero by killing billions of innocent people. You know, yeah. It was just kind of a weird ending. I don't know. I don't know, like, if there was the ability to just remove the Titan powers from the Eldian population, that would have objectively been the correct answer, because that's the source of every problem. Not only does it make the Eldians a threat to the rest of the world, it also makes the rest of the world hate them. So that wouldn't instantly free Eldians from prosecution around the world. I mean, sorry, not prosecution, from persecution. This is why you need editors. This wouldn't instantly solve all the problems the Eldians face, but I don't know, it just seems like a better solution to me. So what's the narrative here? I mean, let's apply some real-world allegories, since they're obviously already present in this story. We're not shying away from real-world allegories at all in the creation of this manga, so let's not shy away from them in the analysis. Is the allegory here that, like, oppressed minorities really are dangerous? I don't really get that vibe, no. Because at no point is it ever in the course of the manga morally justified that the Eldians are treated poorly in the ghettos and the camps they're kept in. So I don't think that's the message. And there's actually a really stunning message that I enjoyed about the cycles of violence and how they perpetuate themselves. See, the Eldians fled to Madagascar. The remaining Eldians around the world were persecuted. Eren Yeager hates the Titans because the Titans killed his mom, but then he realizes the Titans are a weapon he can use against the rest of the world. The cycle of hatred perpetuates itself. There's a character, a Marleyan, or I think she's an Eldian, but she serves the Marleyan military, who at one point, she's like this ruthlessly propagandized person. Like, the Eldians are subhuman, degenerate, bestial devil creatures, and I'm gonna go over to Madagascar, I'm gonna fucking murder them. And she does. She actually shoots Sasha, who I liked. And she is injured and has to flee, and later ends up shacking up and hiding in the barn of an Eldian. And over time, she realizes that her hatred for the Eldian people was unjustified, and that she was the real monster by acting so callously out of hatred. And and so the message from that is that, you know, these cycles of hate are bad in and of themselves. That the process of hating another group of people for who they are is a bad one. And that is a distinctly anti-fascist message to me. When I think of what a fascist piece of media is, I don't think of like Triumph of the Will, where they're explicitly like, yeah, fascism is good, Heil Hitler, whatever. That's a little on the nose. When I think of like fascist theming in media, I think of stuff like some groups of people are inherently better than other groups of people. That's like a big one, that there are in-group, out-group distinctions that are, through inherent properties, make one group better than another. And that's not present in Attack on Titan. Not really. The Eldians are at times the persecuted, at times the persecutors, the victors and the victims, and so too with the rest of the world. It's not always told in the most concise or clear-cut way, but I never got the feeling that any group was supposed to be better than another. Another type of story or imagery that I tend to see in what I would consider like to be part of fascist iconography is the idea that like a bloodline makes a person special. And at first glance, that's kind of present in the whole story, because the Eldian people are made special through their descendancy from Ymir. That's what gives them the whole Titan power thing. But it never makes them morally special. It makes them powerful, but their power isn't always a good thing. In fact, it causes the problems that now lead to their persecution. Their bloodline makes them strong, sure, but it doesn't make them better. It doesn't make them superior people, and that's laid out pretty clearly in the course of the manga. And in fact, there are actually groups of explicit ethno-nationalists, the Jaegerists, people who follow the words of Eren Yeager and become Eldian supremacists, and they're treated like the bad guys in the story. They wear like all black leather outfits. They look like Nazis, and they're shown callously shooting civilians from the Marleyan nation. So ethnic supremacy isn't really on the table here, story-wise. Another theme that's really common in stories that people call fascist is obedience to the state. The idea that individualism makes people weak, but a collective devotion to statehood or to a bloodline or a nation or the fatherland or whatever is what makes a person strong. And I, well, there is a lot of military iconography in Attack on Titan, but the group of soldiers that are respected throughout the show, the point of view characters throughout the show, are the Survey Corps. They aren't defenders of the status quo. They're the edgy go-getters, you know? They're the ne'er-do-wells. They're the ones who aren't really trusted or liked by the rest of their country because they aren't servilely nationalistic. They go out there and they test the boundaries of what's possible. And it's true, they all dress up in uniform and have their little salutes and, you know, they're all very devoted to the king and what have you. But as the story goes on, it turns out the society that they're a part of, the little Madagascar city-state they were all exiled to, isn't a particularly great one. The king is a figurehead, and the nation's actually ruled by basically a collection of cabinet members who use their king as a puppet to essentially enforce their own rule. In fact, the city-state that that Eren Yeager grows up in is explicitly depicted as kind of cruel. There's a part early on in the show, and I mean like first episode early on, where the outermost wall falls, and the Titans pour into the outermost province. See, Wall Maria falls, the outermost wall, and Titans pour into it, which forces millions of humans to flee into the innermost wall, or to Wall Rose, the second innermost wall. And you know what happens? Many of them are left out to die. And it causes a refugee crisis, which leads the government to segregate portions of the population, essentially mandating starvation for huge swaths of people. The state in Attack on Titan is not depicted positively, like at all, not even slightly. And the military group who we follow aren't really super loyal to the state. In fact, they are made enemies of the state shortly into the events of the show. So, blind worship of the state also isn't a vibe that I get from this story. Certainly, there are iconographic elements that I feel come off like they could be also part of a fascist story, but that's just not the vibe that I get from this. And frankly, from what I can see, I don't really see people in like Attack on Titan fan communities demonstrating explicitly far right political tendencies, you know? I think there's a lot that actually pushes against that, if anything. Women are treated in this universe exceptionally well. There's basically no sexism in this world. That's not to say that sexism is never addressed. It just doesn't seem to be a thing that is very present in the day-to-day lives of the people here. Maybe in the higher levels with the aristocracy, but when it comes to women serving, they're treated, as far as I remember, they're treated fine. It's actually a fairly sexless show, which I appreciate because I think anime cheapens its seriousness quite a bit with a lot of really, I don't know, dumb dumb fan service bait. Um yeah, you have that. There's explicitly a lesbian couple, and they're treated well by the narrative. I don't know. It's just the narrative is critical of the state. It's critical of the church. It's critical of ethnic supremacy. It's critical of the cycle of violence. It's critical of hatred. It's critical of all of this. I don't think it's a fascist piece of media. And it could remain the case that Isayama, the mangaka, the person who made this, does have biases, political problems. Maybe there are thought processes there that are worthy of criticism, but I I don't think Attack on Titan is fascist. Now, what I do think Attack on Titan is interesting. And I think that by being interesting, it warrants interesting discussion. I think it's worth looking into, examining, and sometimes examination of a piece of media will lead to criticisms that are maybe a bit off the mark, which is the reason why I'm not like mad at people for saying that it's fascist, even though I disagree with them. Because examinations like that, even if they sometimes upturn wrong results or if they lead you down weird roads, are still valuable in and of themselves. And if it weren't for all that discourse, I wouldn't be talking about this now. Um, so yeah, I don't think it was a fascist piece of media. I don't. I think it was a good story. I don't like the ending. Maybe I'll like the ending a little bit more with time, but maybe the translation, maybe a different translation, the way things are phrased, it'll allow me to reevaluate my positions a little bit, but I don't know. I don't know. But it's still worth taking a look at. So if you haven't watched or read it, but you watched this video for some reason, maybe go give it a look and also give my channel a look because it's all politics here, baby. No more anime, okay? We had our one, foray into it, okay? We're done. We're good, okay? All right, get it out. Cut the feed. Go.